Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Real Talk Bougie. Guys, you know who this is. This is Sean Combs. Sean Combs is starting trial tomorrow on the RICO. He has a sex trafficking RICO case that's pretty robust out of New York, and he's going to be facing justice starting tomorrow. They are selecting the jury, which is a pretty interesting process. And tomorrow they will be selecting potential jurors, and then they kind of go through a first process of selecting individuals, weeding them out, and then they go through a process called voir dire, which voir dire process basically asks a series of questions where they can kind of better determine, are you the type of juror that they want? Like, first there's like basic qualifications of, you know, X, Y, and Z, and then it gets a little bit more detailed. So they, because Sean Combs is a superstar and a lot of people know who he is, whether it's through business, clothing, music, many different reasons, social circles, all of the things. The assumption that no one's going to know who this man is slim to none. And just to have some basic familiarity, right? So these questions are designed to be able to determine whether someone may potentially have a bias or things like that. So let's get into it. If you hadn't seen this, it's very interesting. So there's two different documents. There's the proposed questions by the government, and then there are the proposed questions by Mr. Combs. So they both get an opportunity. We're going to do the government's proposed examination first, because it's also giving a little bit of groundwork. If you have not been following this case, it's okay. It's never too late to, even if the case has been adjudicated, it's never too late to see how justice works. No matter how it pans out or who you might be potentially, if you're just interested in a case in general, or you have a particular interest for whatever reason, at the end of the day, it's never too late. Anyway, okay, let's get into this. This was actually filed. I feel like, gosh, why would I even mention that? Because I can't remember the date. Let's see. Do they have a date on here? The government's was filed. The prosecution filed theirs on the 25th, and I think the government may have filed theirs the day before. If it's important to you to know exactly when it was filed, I will let you know. But I think it was either like the 24th or the 25th, somewhere in that neighborhood, somewhere in the neighborhood of last week. Let me see. Let's see. All right, we'll get to that. Let's get into the document. The government's proposed examination of prospective jurors. The government respectfully requests, pursuant to Rule 24 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, the court include the following questions in its examination of prospective jurors. The court is requested to pursue more detailed questioning if a prospective juror's answers reveal that further inquiry is appropriate in such an instance, to conclude with a inquiry as to whether a particular fact or circumstance would influence the prospective juror in favor or against either the government or the defendant. In addition, the government respectfully asks the court conduct similar detailed questioning regarding any questionnaire answers that warrant further inquiry. The government also respectfully requests the court give its standard preliminary instruction to the panel of prospective jurors. So let me just say this. If you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so your notifications can be set so that whenever I go live or post another video, you will be notified immediately. Okay, as soon as it happens. Also, make sure to talk to your neighbor. If you are in the chat, talk to your neighbor. What do you think about what's going on? Do you have any predictions? It seems as if, there's a lot of different theories going on. Mr. Combs was offered a plea deal last week that he turned down. apparently he must feel very confident in his legal team that he's going to pursue this jury trial to be released from these charges, and to, he's maintained his innocence the whole entire time. So sir maintains his innocence and feels that he will be acquitted of all charges. I'm assuming he turned down his plea deal. Okay, let's get into it. The charges in so A, the charges. This is a criminal case. To help you understand the reasons for the questions I'll be asking you, I want to tell you briefly about the charges. The defendant, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, has been charged with the commission of a certain federal crimes in a document called indictment filed by a grand jury sitting in the district. The indictment is not evidence itself. It simply contains the charges that the government is required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. I will briefly summarize the charges in this case in order to give you a legal framework as you listen to the evidence for what you will ultimately be asked to do at the end of the trial. The indictment contains 5 counts or charges. So this is a great summary for any of you guys just coming in that knows that Diddy is in a world of trouble. He's been sitting at MDC for quite some time right now on a RICO charge, but get ready. This is what the RICO charge entails. Okay. Count 1 charges that from at least 2004 through 2024, the defendant participated in racketeering conspiracy during which he agreed with other employees and associates of his business to commit kidnapping, arson, bribery of a witness, obstruction of justice, drug distribution, forced labor, sex trafficking, and transportation for purposes of engaging in prostitution. Count 2 charges the defendant with sex trafficking of adult female victim through force, fraud, coercion between in or about 2009 through 2018. Count 3 charges the defendant with transporting that female victim and male commercial sex workers to engage in prostitution between 2009 and 2018. Count 4 charges the defendant with sex trafficking a second adult female through force, fraud, coercion between 2021 and 2024. Wonder who that is. Count 5 charges the defendant with transporting the second female and male commercial sex worker to engage in prostitution between 2021 and 2024. General ability to serve. So here we go into some of the general questions, right? So this is B. Would you have any difficulty following my instructions with respect to fundamental principles I have just outlined? Do you have any personal knowledge of the charges in the indictment as I have just described them below, what you have already noted in your questionnaire? Like, for instance, if you watched this particular episode on my channel and you ended up in the jury pool and you listen to this whole thing, do you have any knowledge of the indictment? Well, the answer would be yes. Most people are not necessarily listening to podcast regarding Diddy's case. I mean, there's going to be a number of people who are, but there's going to be a even larger majority who won't, right? Or who have not read it in like the New York Times or the LA Times or in a newspaper, or who went to to a website to go find the document and read it. That's the type of person they'd probably want to weed out, not because of curiosity or someone who wants to be knowledgeable on the case, but they really want clean slates so that they can give you the information and you can make kind of you can make a unbiased decision, right? So question 3, is it not a particularly pleasant duty? It is not a particularly pleasant duty to find another individual guilty of committing a crime if the evidence established a defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Would you be unable to render a guilty verdict for reasons unrelated to the law or evidence? Like, do you have any religious convictions? Are you you know what I mean? Are you, or do you have any particular persuasion to the justice system or things like that? Like, is there any reason that if the evidence told you that this person was guilty, would you not be able to find this person guilty for any, like, they want to know, okay? And if the evidence failed to establish the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, would you be unable to render a not guilty verdict for reasons unrelated to the law or the evidence? Is there any reason you could not view and decide fairly or impartially a case involving the charges as I described it that you have not already noted in your questionnaire? C, knowledge of trial participants. As noted in your questionnaire, the defendant, Sean Combs, is represented by Mark Agnifilo, Tenny Garagos, Anna Estavo, Alexandra Shapiro, Jason Driscoll, and Brian Steele. They will be assisted by, and they're going to include the list of additional attorneys. Please ask them to stand. So this is kind of a little bit of a script too for the government team. Seeing them here today, do you know any of these individuals? Because I'm going to be honest, he's got the who's who of like superstar attorneys, okay? So there might be people that you might identify. Mark Agnifilo's wife represents Luigi, okay? Um Brian Steele, we know, was on the YSL case. There's a lot of people who are court watchers or just watching the news and keeping up with what's going on may recognize any of these attorneys. So they're going to have the attorney team stand up and see, is there anyone who recognizes any of these people, and would that be a problem? Please, guys. Number 6, similarly, as noted in your questionnaire, the prosecution referred to hereby as the government is represented here as in all cases where it is a party before this court by the United States Attorney of the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton. The conduct of the trial will be in the immediate charge of the Assistant United States Attorney, Maureen Comey, Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Christy Slavic, Madison Smizer, and Mitzi Steiner. They will be assisted by HSI agent Sean Quinn, HSI agent Kira Murphy, HSI task force officer Phil Adeniszewski. And HSI, I'm going to just assume Homeland Security Investigations, okay? As well as Shannon Becker, Lucy Gavin, Chanel Foster, paralegal specialist in U.S. Attorney's Office. Please ask them to stand. Seeing them here today, do you know any of these individuals? Somebody's cousin could be called to the jury pool. You never know. Someone's wife, their their physician. I mean, it could be so random. You never know who is going to be called. You don't know what you're being called for. And then you get there and it's like your sister-in-law's brother is there. You know what I mean? So it is an opportunity to get all conflicts on the table because you don't want to have a mistrial for any reason. So this is the weeding out to avoid any of those kind of like, oh, we didn't know. Okay. Are you familiar with anyone else present in the courtroom, including all court personnel? Do you live next door to the clerk? Okay. Do you recognize any of your fellow jurors in the jury assembly room? Do you belong to the same gym as the judge? I mean, anything, right? I will now hand you a list of names of individuals who may be mentioned during the trial or who may be witnesses in the case. Please read the list to yourself and do not say any of the names aloud. Please answer the following questions referring only to the number next to the relevant names without saying any names out loud. Do you know any of the people on this list personally? Have you had any dealings directly, indirectly with these individuals to your knowledge? Have any of your relatives, friends, associates had any dealings with any of these individuals? Knowledge of locations. Do you have any familiarity with any of the following places that may be mentioned during the course of this trial? Relationship with or views regarding government and defense. Have you ever studied or practiced law or worked in any capacity of a law office? Have you or has a relative or close friend worked for or with any federal, state, or local law enforcement agency, such as the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York or the Department of Homeland Security Investigations, or New York City Police Department in any capacity, including as a contractor? Have you, as or has a relative or close friend done work for or been associated with a criminal defense lawyer or private investigator? Have you ever been involved or do you expect to become involved in any legal action, dispute with the United States or agency, officer, employee of the United States? Do you have any views about the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, HSI, NYPD, or any other law enforcement agency that would interfere your ability to be fair or impartial? Do you have any views about criminal defense attorneys that would interfere with your ability to be fair or impartial? E, experience with and opinions of legal proceedings and relevant topics. Have you or has any relative or close friend ever participated in state, federal court case, whether criminal or civil, as a witness, plaintiff, or defense? If so, what kind of case? If so, was your role? If so, is there anything about that experience that would prevent you from acting as a fair and impartial juror? Have you or any relative or close friend ever been involved or appear in a witness as a witness in an investigation by a federal or state grand jury or by a congressional or state legislative committee, licensing authority, governmental agency, or been questioned in any matter by any federal, state, local law enforcement agency? If so, if there is anything about the experience that would prevent you from acting as a fair and impartial juror in this case? 18. Have you or any relative or close friend ever been subpoenaed for any inquiry or investigation? If so, there anything about the experience that would prevent you from acting as a fair and impartial juror in this case? We already know, if you're listening to this at this moment and you're thinking, wow, I may not know someone personally, but boy, there has been a case I've been following, and baby, there is a certain mistress of a particular accused defendant who she couldn't answer uh, in the affirmative to any of these questions, where she would probably be precluded, right? She would be not able to serve, because when you have very strong opinions about the government or its processes, and you feel that there have been um wrongdoing, and you feel like the system is stacked against defendants, well, they're going to exclude you from the process, right? So that's what that's making me think of immediately. Have you or has any relative or close friend been subpoenaed? Well, okay. Let's get back into it. 19. Have you or has any relative friend ever been subject to an investigation, baby, or accused by a or investigation or accusations by any grand jury, state, federal, or any other investigation? If so, is there anything about that experience that would prevent you from acting as a fair and impartial juror in this case? 20. Have you or any of your relatives or close friends ever been a victim of a crime? If yes, please describe the circumstances, include the type of crime, when it happened, the outcome of any law enforcement actions. Is there anything about the experience that would affect you and your ability to be fair and impartial in the case? Have so 21, you may hear evidence in this case relating to acts of violence, including intimate partner violence or assaults. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, experience relating to that aspect of a case that would affect you and your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? 22, you may hear evidence in this case relating sexual assault, including rape. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, or experiences relating to that aspect of the case that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? 23, you may hear evidence in this case relating to the payment of commercial sex workers in exchange for sex. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, experience relating to prostitution and the enforcement of law around prostitution, and that could affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? 24, the government notes that this question may be omitted depending on the outcome of pending motion practice. So 24 is not available. 25, you may hear evidence relating to firearms. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, or experiences about guns and enforcement of guns laws that could affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? You may hear evidence relating to the distribution and use of illegal drugs. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, experience relating to illegal drugs and enforcement of the law and drug use, drug addiction, and could affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? 27, you may hear testimony from law enforcement officers and other law enforcement personnel. Would you have any difficulty assessing the credibility of law enforcement witnesses, just like you would any other witness? You may hear testimony from witnesses who are alleged victims of sexual assault, sexual abuse, sex trafficking. Would you have difficulty assessing the credibility of such witness, just like you would any other victim? You may hear testimony in this case that law enforcement officers recovered certain evidence during searches, including electronic devices such as photos. You may hear also testimony that law enforcement officers later searched electronic devices and recovered evidence from them. Similarly, you may hear testimony in this case that law enforcement officers recovered certain evidence, cellular telephones, recorded records in iCloud accounts. These searches were perfectly legal. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, and experiences regarding such searches by law enforcement that would influence your ability to evaluate the testimony fairly and impartially? You also may hear testimony that in this case from expert witnesses. Have any of you had any experience with experts? Do you have any general feelings about use of experts that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial in this case? You may hear testimony in this case from witnesses testifying under a grant of immunity, that is, witnesses whose testimony cannot be used against them in any future prosecution. The use of immunized witnesses is lawful and permitted. Do you have any feelings, beliefs of experience and or experiences regarding the government's use of immunized witnesses that could influence your ability to evaluate this testimony fairly or impartially? Certain witnesses may be referred to in open court by a pseudonym, okay? That is under different names to protect their privacy. The full names of the witnesses are known to the government, the defense, the court. They will be known by the jury. Would you be more likely to believe a witness merely because she testified under a different name? Would you be less likely to believe witness merely because they testified under a different name? Do you have any expectations about the types of evidence the government should or will present in a criminal trial or in a criminal trial more generally? Would you be unable to follow my instructions that the government is not required to use any particular investigative technique uncovering evidence or prosecuting a crime? You may hear evidence that other individuals, in addition to the defendant, were involved in alleged crimes. Those other individuals are not on trial here, and you may not draw any inference, favorable or unfavorable, towards the government or the defense from that act. You may also not speculate as the reason why other persons are not on trial in this case. Do you have any concerns that you could not follow this instruction? F, questionnaire answers warranting additional inquiry. The government respectfully asks the court to inquire with appropriate follow-up questions about any answers a prospective juror provided to the questions that required additional explanation. Summary of questions, that's G. In these questions and questionnaires, I have tried to direct your attention to possible reasons why you might not be able to sit as a fair and impartial juror in the case. Apart from any prior questions, do you have the slightest doubt in your mind, for any reason whatsoever, that you would not be able to serve conscientiously, fairly, and impartially in this case, and to render a true or just verdict without fear, favor, sympathy, bias, prejudice, or according to the law as I will explain it to you? H, juror background. The government respectfully requests the court ask each juror to state the following information. Okay, here we go. This is getting close to the end. Juror's age. How old are you? In the area in which the juror resides and with whom the juror resides. That can make a difference, just because if people have caregiver responsibilities and concerns and things of that, I assume that's being used for that. Where the juror was born. Okay. The juror's educational background, including the highest degree obtained, whether the juror has served in the military or if in capacity, and for what duration, the juror's occupation, the name and location of the juror's employer and period of employment with the employer, the same information with respect to the juror's spouse and any working children, where the juror gets his or her news, including what newspapers. Are you on YouTube a lot? Do you get all your news from X? Do you like Fox News? Do you like CNN? Like, where do you get your news from? Do you only read tabloids? Those type of things, right? Where you get your news, including newspapers, magazines, the juror reads, and how often. What television programs the juror regularly watches, whether the juror watches Law and Order or CSI and other crime and other police dramas, the juror's hobbies and leisure time activities and organizations, requested instructions following impaneling the jury. Number 39. From this point until the time when you retire to deliberate your verdict, it is your duty not to discuss this case. So if you make it to question 39, baby, you're in, right? From this point until the time when you retire to deliberate your verdict, it is your duty to not discuss this case and not to remain in the presence of any other persons who may be discussing this case. The rule about not discussing the case with others includes discussions even with members of your own family and friends. 40. If at any time during the course of the trial, any person attempts to talk to you, to communicate with you about the case, either. Okay, guys, sorry, I had to take a quick break. Number 40. If at any time during the course of the trial, any person attempts to talk to you, girl, if they try to talk to you or to communicate with you about this case, either in or out of the courthouse, you should immediately report such an attempt to me through the deputy clerk. In this regard, let me explain to you that the attorneys or the defendant in the case are not supposed to talk to jurors, not even to offer a friendly greeting. So if you happen to see any of them outside the courtroom, they will and should ignore you. Please do not take offense. They will be acting properly to do so. Yeah, not even a hello, because at the end of the day, they're so nice. You know what I mean? Like, no. Don't expect, if you're on the jury, don't expect to connect with any of the attorneys in any sort of meaningful, even unmeaningful way. Not even simply a hello. Don't even, that level of expectation can taint your opinion. So boom. Okay, number 41, slightly modifying suggested instruction from the Court of Appeals, United States. I know that many of you use cell phones, the internet, social media, and other tools of technology. You also must not talk to anyone about this case or use these tools to communicate electronically with anyone about this case. So they're not trying to tell people don't use your cell phone, don't look at the media, da, 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 da. But if it's about this case, click off. This includes your family, friends. You may not communicate with anyone about this case on your cell phone, iPhone, Samsung, text messaging, email, social media websites, or applications, including Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, blogs, websites, internet chat rooms, and by any other means. Let me just tell you something, y'all. People are very nosy and people love to get themselves involved in stuff. And let me tell you this, like what we saw in the Lori Vallow case recently, baby, when there was a juror, potentially there's a question about a juror right now in the Lori Vallow case. If you've been following Lori Vallow, Daybell, and baby, let me tell you something. Juror, I think it's juror 15. He made a statement walking out after the deliberations, and it just appeared to be like he may have known something the way he phrased it, to the point where it has been bubbled up to the judge, and the judge had to send it to the defendant, Lori Daybell, for review. And now she's asking for a whole new trial, y'all. It's a mess. Okay. So, yes, it is incumbent upon the jurors, if you accept this assignment, you really have to keep to the directions, because any and everybody's watching. And trust and believe Mr. Combs doesn't want to be in jail. And I am so sure that any opportunity that he has to be able to, any kind of a loophole, anything that his lawyers, his very well paid, expensive lawyers have to be able to get him out of this trouble, baby, they will do it. Okay. All right, let's get to document number 272, which is Mr. Combs' proposed voir dire. And again, if you're just now coming in, what is voir dire? Voir dire is the question and answer session for the jurors, that they use these questionnaires to round out their jury pool and to make a decision. Are you someone we would like to have help us with this case? Okay. Let me set this up big. Okay, so here we go. Not as long. Make sure, if you're just now coming in, to subscribe to this channel if you're not already. If you enjoy content like this, we will definitely be doing some recaps and updates. There are no cameras allowed in federal court, so there won't be any live video of this trial, but there will be, I'm sure people will be live updates on X, and we'll get our updates as we can and as things are notable. So definitely, if you want to keep up with what's going on, kind of, now, just make sure to subscribe to this channel. Okay. Anyway, let's get into it. Here we go. So page 1 was the cover sheet. Page 2, what is your age? So similar to what the government's asking, but let's get into what else they're asking. What is your age? What is your sex? What is your gender identity? In what city or country do you live? Who, if anyone, do you live with? If you are married or in a relationship, what is your spouse or partner's occupation and employer? How long have you worked for that employer or been in that occupation? What are their job responsibilities? Do you have children? And does that make a difference? I mean, it might, just from a, Diddy is a family guy. Diddy also, he's a mama's boy. Also, if someone has very strict responsibilities with their children, they must pick up at 3, they must pick up by 5, things like that. Those are also things to know. So I don't think having children would preclude you from serving. It's just like, I'm sure to take into account, and if you don't have children, I don't know that that would be held against you either. But I think probably from a time constraint, also just from, certain aspects of the defendant's lifestyle, those are things that, you know, maybe they're wanting to know why they're collecting that data. Who knows? Do you have children? If so, what are their ages? If you have adult children, what, if anything, do they do for work? Are you currently working? Who is your current employer? It's funny that they asked about a spouse or partner's occupation before they asked about the actual individual. Who is your current employer, most recent employer? What is your job title? If not, when was your last time that you worked? And please describe what's your most recent employment. What were your specific duties in your job? If you are working, what do you do for a living? What is your specific duties at your job? How would you describe your job responsibilities? Do you manage or supervise others at your job? What is your highest level of education? If you have completed, if you have a college or postgraduate degree, what was your degree or area of study? I am going to read you a list of occupational areas. Please tell me if you or someone you are very close to has any training, experience, socialized knowledge in this area, and explain your or their experience. Business, sexual assault training, sexual harassment training, domestic violence training, psychiatry, psychology, security services, addiction treatment, counseling, finance, law, or law enforcement. What clubs, groups, or organizations do you belong to or regularly participate? Example, church groups, professional organizations, volunteer activities, victim rights groups, etc. If you have a spouse or partner, what clubs, groups, organizations does your spouse or partner belong to or regularly participate in? What do you or your what do you do on your free time? What are your hobbies and interests outside of work and family? Do you use social media platforms? If yes, which ones? Do you get How do you get your news? What, if any, newspapers, magazines, websites, online news services, publications do you read most often? Do you listen to any podcasts? If so, which one? Hopefully it's Real Talk Bougie. Number 15, I am going to read three group decision making styles. And I'd like for you to tell me which one comes closest to the way you make decisions. Strongly express your views to get the outcome you believe is best. Participate in a discussion and try to build a consensus. Listen and follow what you think the majority favors. Do you believe you make the most decisions based on your intuition or examination of facts? Do you have any personal experiences or opinions about drug and alcohol use or addiction? If yes, what is your experience? You are going to hear about drug and illegal alcohol use in this trial. Is that going to be difficult for you based on your experience? The defendant in this case is a wealthy celebrity. Do you have any opinions regarding wealthy individuals that would affect your ability to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case? Do you believe that wealthy people get away with things that the less wealthy do not? What kind of music do you like? How often do you listen to music? Do you have an opinion about hip hop music industry or artists in that genre? If so, please tell me what it is. There may be evidence in this case about people engaging in sexual relationships with multiple sex partners. Would hearing about this type of evidence be difficult for you? There may be evidence that people cheated on girlfriends or boyfriends with other individuals. Would hearing about this type of evidence affect your ability to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case? Have you ever been through a traumatic event? If so, would that affect your ability to listen to witnesses may who may say that they went through a traumatic event? Do you have any experiences or training in the area of sex crimes? If so, please tell us what it is. Do you have any experience or training concerning crime victims? If so, tell me what that is. Do you have strong feelings about prosecutors? Do you have strong feelings about criminal defense lawyers? There is going to be testimony from law enforcement officers in this case. Would you feel a law enforcement officer's testimony more credible than other witnesses? You are also going to hear testimony from alleged victims in this case. Do you think you would tend to favor the alleged victim testimony or over the other witnesses? As a jury questionnaire indicated, this case charges racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and interstate prostitution. Is there any reason why you could not be fair and impartial juror in for this case? We appreciate the court's consideration. Mark Agnifilo, Tenny Genegos. Okay. And there is a footnote. As indicated at today's conference, we are including this question proposal now, but intended to confer with the government over the next week regarding the type of questions would be appropriate to address the motions docket. Okay, so that's that. That's it. That's all. Pretty interesting. If you hadn't seen this, let me know. We as we get updates or minutes from the court, we will keep you guys updated. Are you going to be, keeping up to date with what's going on with Sean Combs? Let me know down below. Again, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We'd love to have you. And I will see you next time I go live, post a video, and do all of the things, guys. Take care. Have a wonderful day. And I will see you next time. Bye, guys.